Hi everyone, welcome to today's workshop on networking. My name is Amanda Demschlinger and I am one of the career counselors in OITE Career Services. And I'm happy to be joining you today to talk about the topic of networking. So this is a pretty short presentation, so we have about 45 minutes to get through the slides that I've prepared, and I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can at the end. So just a few housekeeping items before we start. All of the participants are muted, and so the way that you're going to be able to ask me questions is just through the question chat box. So feel free to kind of send any questions that you have there, and I will do my best to go through them at the end of the presentation, and any questions that I don't get to answer, I will do my best to follow up with you. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so one of the main things that I often hear when I talk about networking with trainees or anybody that I'm working with in general is sort of this hesitation to begin. And most people, when I stress the importance of networking as a vital part of career exploration and a job search, kind of give me a sigh. And I understand that because there is a lot of resistance to networking, and maybe some of these statements are going to ring true for you. I often hear people say, I don't network because it feels fake, it feels manipulative, it doesn't feel genuine, it feels like I'm selling myself. I would network if I was extroverted, but I'm a very strong introvert and I have a very hard time engaging in this process. It feels uncomfortable to me. A lot of times people also feel like they can only network by attending large group settings or big kind of career fair type networking events. Others feel that they're bothering people if they're asking someone for information or for a meeting, or there's a feeling that your experience and your education and your training should be the thing that gets you the job, not necessarily a connection. So I would just encourage you to kind of recognize that a lot of these are very, very common beliefs and feelings about it. Unfortunately, networking is a really vital part of the process. And just to counter some of these points, I think actually some of the best networkers that I've worked with in my time at OITE have been self-described strong introverts. And so there is a really great way to kind of network as an introvert, and a lot of it can just be setting up sort of one-on-one informational interviews and meetings with people. And recognizing that it's not necessarily going to be you going in and having to give this really strong sales pitch. I think if you are going into it in that way, you're probably doing it a little bit too aggressively. I do think that being assertive is an essential part of a job search, but I don't want you to feel like a salesperson going in and kind of pitching yourself. A lot of times it is just simply about kind of going through and asking people for information. So the other thing to kind of consider when you're thinking about this resistance to networking, please recognize that this is very normal. Networking really can feel like an awkward process to engage in. And so really, as you're thinking about it, I encourage you to kind of check your overall attitude about the process. Sometimes people have sort of preconceived ideas about what networking means, and they go into it feeling very negative before they've even begun. And really, it's important for you to kind of redefine really what it means to interact with quote unquote strangers. I think a lot of us grew up in a world where, you know, as children, we were told about stranger danger, and it was, you know, an unsafe thing to reach out to people that we didn't know. And now, as professional working adults, career advisors like myself are encouraging you to reach out to people that you don't know and strangers, and reach out to cold contacts on LinkedIn or within professional associations in order to kind of get some tips and strategies on what worked for them. So really think about sort of redefining what that means for you. And then finally, there is going to sort of be an element of a risk of rejection. And I think that this is common with networking. And, you know, try not to let it bother you too much. It's very common for people to kind of report that they've sent requests for informational interviews to a variety of people and just haven't heard back, or the person said no, that they didn't have time. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you were out of line in initiating that request. It's just sort of a natural part of the process, and you know, move on quickly and go on to sort of that next contact that you want to try to connect with. So why is it important to network? There are many, many reasons about why networking is really valuable, and I'm not going to necessarily spend a lot of time going over all of the statistics and the data that has been compiled in order to support why networking is important. But simply put, people who have a strong approach to networking generally have a shorter job search. I would say in my own personal experience, anecdotally working with trainees, people who tend to kind of put their main priority on networking and not necessarily just kind of like hunkering down and applying to online postings, tend to shave off about 2 months from their job search, I would say. And that happens because this act of networking and talking to people really allows you to often tap into this hidden job market. And there is a stat that's still relevant today, that a lot of positions are not necessarily advertised online. Legally, employers and organizations are supposed to post positions online, but sometimes they exist in the mind of a hiring manager who just hasn't gotten around to posting it. I think anybody who's worked in a lab or tried to talk to PIs about potential opportunities within their labs know that this is very true, and that sometimes it just gets sidelined within the process. So that really helps you to kind of establish an edge on the competition in the sense of being informed about the job market, about any opportunities within an organization, within a lab. And just by talking to people, it helps give you visibility for future openings. The other thing that's really common now, especially if you are interested in going into industry, is referrals through company networks. And I would actually say that even as recently as maybe 2 to 3 years ago, we used to encourage people to be a little bit cautious about asking for direct referrals. But now there's actually a lot of an incentive structure for employees to refer you to their company. If an employee refers somebody who ends up getting hired, a lot of times there's actually a monetary incentive and bonus for them. So I think people are a lot more willing to sort of make those referrals, of course, you know, in good faith that they know that you are qualified and have a good work ethic and all of that. But I think that that's something that you shouldn't necessarily shy away from even asking what that process would be like within an informational interview. Okay. So one of the questions that I see coming in, and then I'll try to answer more questions at the very end, is if the slides are going to be available. And yes, they will be available. And if you registered for the event, you should be able to see it. And a lot of our events are actually saved online as well. So just check our website for the link. Okay, so other reasons to network. So really it's important for you to think about networking as sort of playing the long game. It really is a lifelong career development technique. So not only does it, like I mentioned in the previous slide, help you with your job search and hopefully help shave off time within that process, it really does also help with your general career exploration. And it does that because by talking to people who are working in a variety of different fields, you are in essence educating yourself about the different roles that are available within these fields. It allows you to hear about other people's experiences and what that was like. And then inadvertently reflect and assess on your own skills, values, and interests, and how that might be a good match. It helps you narrow down the types of roles that you might be seeking and hopefully help you develop a target list going forward. So it's really important to think about networking as a strategy that you should really be employing constantly throughout your career, and not necessarily just when you're job searching and just when you're kind of needing to make a transition. So networking is, this is a nice little acronym that I often use when you're thinking about what do you network for. And so when you think about it, AIRS, so you're often asking people for advice, for information, for the referrals that I mentioned, and just generally for support within the process. Now, before you begin embarking on any of this networking, it is really important for you to remember that by starting this process, you are kind of marketing yourself already. So it's important to think about kind of assessing your own personal branding, and just making sure that there's a brand congruence across all of the platforms in which you are marketing yourself. So that could be, just your job search documents, your resume, your CV, your cover letter. There's a really good chance that you're going to be asked for those documents at some point during networking or in an informational interview. And so making sure that those documents are up to date, the most polished and professional versions that you can compile. And then in addition, recognizing that people are going to be looking you up online as well. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be scouring all of your social media sites, but LinkedIn is really the go-to for networking. And I guarantee that the person that you're meeting with, or even if you're applying for positions, they're going to be looking up your presence on sites like LinkedIn. And then just finally, your in-person presentation, how you articulate your goals, your skills, what you would be able to bring. And we're going to talk a little bit later about your elevator pitch and the importance of that. But that really goes into sort of that overall presentation. There are many reports that first impressions are formed very, very quickly and are very hard to counteract once they're formed. So we actually just wrote a blog post recently that interview decisions are made within the first 60 seconds. And so people are making their decisions about your overall candidacy usually within that first minute of an interview when you're answering the question to tell me about yourself. So that's formed really quickly, and it's important for you to have thought about that and how you are presenting yourself overall. One quick note about resumes and CVs within informational interviews and networking. Probably one of the main questions that I get from students and trainees is, should I attach my resume and should I attach my resume and CV when I'm reaching out to people and asking for informational interviews? And I think that's a bit forward. I probably wouldn't. I would probably just reach out to them and ask them for time for you to ask them about their career path. If they bring it up within the informational interview and say, oh, I'm happy to take a look at your resume, CV, then by all means present it. I think you could also ask, what would be important for you to highlight within your job search documents? What do they think are some of the main skills that are worth noting within these documents? And that could be a way for you to kind of bring it into the conversation as well. So going on to the elevator pitch. So I'm going to kind of walk you through how I think you should practice and kind of prepare for that. But really take some time now before you've even scheduled your first informational interview to really develop and perfect your elevator pitch. So this should be a little speech that you have down cold. You know it perfectly. And it's really going to be something that you're using constantly, whether you're introducing yourself to somebody that you're meeting, whether you're using that as a platform in order to kind of explain your experiences within a formal interview. So this is something that you need to spend a good chunk of time really thinking about and cultivating and making sure that it's well done. If you have any questions about it, If you feel like you need to practice, if you're a trainee at the NIH, you can make an appointment with one of the OIT career counselors. I'm one of them. We often help people develop this and listen and give critiques and feedback. So make sure that this is something that you feel really confident about. And then lastly, before you begin in this process, I would really encourage you to think about determining your own goals for networking. What is it that you're hoping to get? Is it expanding your connections, learning about jobs that aren't posted? Really, what are your goals? So I think the thing that I often hear from trainees is that they're disappointed by networking conversations or informational interviews that they had, and they felt like they didn't get much out of it, and they leave a little dissatisfied, and then they don't engage in the process anymore going forward. And I think that's a real shame, because I think it's important to first think about what you can actually gain from networking. And these are some ideas for you to think about in terms of what you're hoping to get out of a networking meeting. So a lot of times people will schedule these in order to secure the name of someone else that they connect with in order to continue that conversation. So that's kind of what we consider the domino effect, right? So you're speaking to somebody, you're learning a little bit about their career path, you're explaining your goals, where you're hoping to go, but essentially you're wanting to get more recommendations and more contact referrals so that you can kind of continue to expand your network more and more. Networking is a really great chance to learn about the culture of an organization and assess whether that's going to be a fit for you. I think this is something that you should absolutely be doing before you are going on formal interviews. I think you can ask questions in formal interviews about the culture and work environment, but recognize that those answers are a little bit, I would say, polished and pared down because it's happening in a formal setting. And so a lot of times in informational interviews, you really get the true nitty-gritty of what it's like to work there. You can also learn about contacts and how they secured their position, especially if it's a position that you're hoping to one day have yourself. And to hear feedback on areas that maybe you need to work on developing more, or thinking about gap areas for professional development activities that might be important for you in order to be competitive for a certain industry or field. And then you can also ask about progress towards your career goals. Have, especially if it's a contact that you know well, have them listen and provide feedback and kind of insights on how you can be a little bit more effective going forward. So now that you can start thinking about engaging in the process, where do you start? So we really recommend that you start with your inner circle. And so your inner circle are those people that you know really well. So that could be your classmates, your peers, your lab mates, mentors, mentees, your current supervisors, also within that sort of your personal relationships. So family, spouses, partners, friends, their close colleagues, and any sort of other existing relationships that you feel like would be considered a close contact for you. And really, that's where you should start, and kind of asking for recommendations of people that they know that you could that they could refer you on to. Then moving from there and going kind of out to the second outer circle. So thinking about your professional acquaintances, your coworkers, former coworkers, sideline connections. And then finally, and this is very, very common again, and I just sort of want to normalize that more than anything, expanding to professionals you don't know. And I recognize that networking and anything that has to do with communication often has cultural norms and lenses that come up within this process. And so networking is very, very common within North America, especially within the United States. And I know that science is such a global and diverse field. And so maybe from your home country, this is something that wouldn't easily or readily happen where you're from. But recognize that if you are looking for, especially positions within the United States, that this is a very common process to kind of engage in. And it is very normal to actually reach out to cold contacts and quote unquote strangers and ask them about their career path. So you can find those people in a variety of different ways, through professional associations, connections. I know conferences are great opportunities when we're able to attend them. They're great opportunities to connect with like-minded individuals, different seminars, community events. And then finally, I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about this later on, but connections from social media. I mean, especially now while we are physically distancing from one another, networking via social media platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, blogs, Twitters, different communities that we're connected to are really a great platform and a great mechanism in order to continue to make those connections when we can't meet in person and face to face. So one very common question that I hear from trainees is, how can I rescue my old contacts? So maybe you have people that you went to grad school with, that you just learned are working in an industry that you're really interested in, but you haven't reached out to them in 10 plus years. And how do you sort of begin that conversation again? So for any relationship that may have experienced a fallout or sort of a lapse of time and contact, you know, I think some general tips would be kind of watching PubMed and ResearchGate, hearing or seeing what they're up to, reaching out to congratulate them on new positions, starting conversations via LinkedIn, liking posts that they share. Even subtle things like that are just nice ways to kind of reinitiate the conversation. You can also send them articles of interest. And, you know, I think really at the basic level, a general hello and reaching out to them is fine. And I often think that holidays and the new year are a really good chance to reconnect with people. And, you know, like anything, maybe they won't reciprocate, but I think at least sort of sending that out there and trying to reestablish that connection is completely fine. And at the end of the day, networking is really just having a conversation. And so it's really important for you to have your elevator speech prepared, to have open-ended questions ready. And a lot of people like to have just general talking points ready too, sort of like the icebreaker questions that aren't really yet talking about their career path, but just kind of a nice catch up. And if you feel like you need to kind of map that out and have those written and prepared ahead of time, feel free to do so, especially if that's going to help sort of ease your anxiety going into it. And just preparing the informational interview questions overall. It's really up to you within an informational interview to be the one who leads the conversation. So you're going to be the one who is starting it, wrapping it up, making sure that you're not going over time, that you're kind of taking the lead on directing the questions. And so if you request and ask for an informational interview, make sure that you go into that conversation really prepared. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about the elevator speech so far. And so going into a little bit more detail about this specifically. So the critical elements of an elevator speech. I mean, the elevator speech is just kind of a fancy way of saying, how are you going to introduce yourself? And so obviously you're going to start with your name, right? The number of people that I see forget their name within sort of their general introduction is astonishing. So first and foremost, your name and your professional identity. So sometimes people will choose to share their kind of formal title. I'm a postdoc at the NIH, or you could just kind of generally talk about your area of expertise as well. Your current organizational affiliation, the NIH, if you have one. If you don't have one, that's okay. Your personal specialty or strength, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And then your goals and where you're hoping to go. And I think number 5 is really, really the important part of the elevator speech. So many times I hear people give very vague answers to this, or they'll say, I'm looking for a job. And I will tell you that just anything that's very general and vague, like looking for a job, is going to go in one ear and out the other, and that person is not going to remember you. So really spend some time thinking about what your true career development goals are, what your job search goals are, where you're hoping to go, And even if you don't feel super confident or super sure that that's exactly what it is, I think it's okay within this setting to say, I'm currently a postdoc at the NIH. Through this experience, I realized that I have 2 to 3 different areas of interest that I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about and explore. I'm currently thinking of going into science policy, science communication specifically, and then go into a little bit more detail. And so I think as long as you give something for the person to kind of remember you by, that's going to be the key thing. Okay, so now, and think, oh, sorry, I didn't realize that came up. So this elevator speech overall should take no more than 30 to 60 seconds. So this should not be, the informational interview should not be like 5 minutes of you kind of talking about you and your background. So make sure that it's quick, concise, and focused, and then you quickly go on to asking them questions about them. Okay, so in thinking about your signature strengths and what that is going to mean in terms of marketing yourself, I think this is something that myself included, we all kind of struggle with thinking about how we can market ourselves effectively, and that really ties into sort of the branding. So sometimes even just by nature of going through and updating your resume, your CV, your cover letter, it really forces you to think about your experiences and your qualifications, and most importantly, your accomplishments. And so reflecting on all of that, thinking about your impact. What have you done to make an organization, team, a situation better? What did you figure out? What did you help? What did you answer? What was your expertise? And how can you quantify that in terms of the accomplishments that you provided for an organization? So those are often really good questions to think about asking yourself at the very beginning of this process, because it's going to be something that you should really market when you're doing informational interviews, but ultimately at the end, it's going to be something that you're asked about in interviews as well. So we actually have a list of accomplishments questions within our OITE resume and CV guide. And it's meant to help kind of trigger you thinking about what your experiences are and how you could speak about them within your job search documents. But I encourage you to kind of take a look at that full list of questions. The ones that are listed on the slide are just kind of a few to kind of help get you started in thinking about that. But really reflecting on your accomplishments, what are the characteristics that define you? What is the value that you can add within those organizations? If you're unsure, ask others for feedback. What do you normally hear in terms of your, from colleagues, from your supervisor? What do they say that you are really great at excelling at? And if for some reason you can't think of it on your own, definitely don't hesitate in seeking out external feedback in order for you to develop that and be able to speak about it. So informational interviews. This is really at the core, having a conversation, and this is a networking conversation. So it really allows for insider information. It ultimately helps you prepare a strong application in the field that you're interested in going into. There are excellent ways of finding information about a career path or hearing about current job openings. And as I noted, it's really going to be important for you when you're requesting informational interviews to have a long list of questions prepared. So if you need ideas or help on questions that are good to ask within an informational interview, please check out this link. Again, you can just kind of Google this, OITE informational interviews, and it will take you to this PDF. But we've listed a lot of really great informational interview questions. And I think it's always nice to think about kind of categorizing it in different ways. So you can ask about the person, about personally, how they got into the field. What do they like about it? What are some of the challenges that they have faced working in that arena? And then just professionally, what do they see are sort of the outlook for jobs, for growth within their organization. So I think that there are a variety of different kind of sub areas that you can also kind of focus on in terms of questions. But that list outlines it really nicely. So be sure to take a look at that before you have any informational interviews. So the only thing that is really considered a big faux pas of informational interviews are don't ask explicitly for a job. So it's often sort of inferred, or people are able to read between the lines and know that you're looking for a position and that you are job searching. So just don't come right out and explicitly ask them, especially if it's a cold contact. I think for some, high level relationships or close relationships that you have, you could perhaps do that, but I would just be a little bit cautious, especially for people that you don't know super well. And then don't ask about salary information, about their salary information in particular. As you'll see from the list, that is a question that you can generally ask in the sense of asking what is sort of the average starting salary for entry or mid-level positions within this field. You can ask that, but don't ask anything that's going to be a little bit too personal and make anybody uncomfortable. So thinking about informational interviews in another way, there are essentially kind of 4 goals that you have going into this conversation. So think about it in terms of present, asking them to tell you about their current position, their past, how did they get into the field, the future, what do they see as some of the long-term opportunities within the field, and the advice. So contacts, feedback, professional associations that might be good to join, insights into possible positions or opportunities, generally speaking. So I think as long as you're kind of thinking about it in these terms, this is the nice framework to go into this conversation with. Now, one of the most common mistakes that I often see for networking in general and informational interviews is the lack of follow-up. And so follow-up is really important within the networking process. And remember that anytime that you are connecting with somebody for an informational interview, you should always immediately follow up and thank them. And by immediately, I mean within like 24 to 48 hours. So make sure that you're thanking every person that you connect with. And, thinking about just generally nurturing your connections overall, sort of what we already touched on, saying general hellos, sending articles of interest, things like that. And making sure that whatever your system is that you have in place, that it's working for you. So I've seen people share with me really elaborate spreadsheets that they've created in terms of contacts and when they've reached out, when they're planning on following up. And if that works for you, that's great. I've also seen people use sites like jibberjobber.com in order to just kind of keep track of their contacts. LinkedIn is also a really great way to kind of help you organize your contacts. And think about that. Now, the thing about following up is that you should do it, but I also want you to kind of use your follow-up wisely. So one of the main questions that I get from trainees is, I reached out to somebody for an informational interview and I haven't heard back from them. When can I follow up? And you absolutely can follow up, but I would say that you should only follow up a maximum of 2 times, and you should probably space it out as well. So if you reached out to somebody requesting an informational interview and you still haven't heard from them, you can absolutely follow up and send them an email. But I would probably wait 2 weeks, maybe a week or 2, to give them time to kind of go through. A lot of us get tons of emails, our inboxes are overflowing, perhaps they just missed it the first time around. And so kind of use that time frame going forward as well when you're thinking about following up after that. If after 2 attempts you haven't heard anything, I would consider that a cold contact at this point and to just kind of move on to the next person. All right, so thinking about how can you begin sort of networking and what are some of the tools that you can use in order to make this process a little bit easier? So there are lots of different online sites now that are going to be really, really helpful for you. Thinking for those of you who are at the NIH, we have an OITE alumni database. And this is a really great resource for you. People opt in to the system. So you, if you're reaching out to people within the OITE alumni database, don't worry about the fact that they don't want to be contacted. They've actually self-selected and incorporated and chosen to be included in the database. So the only thing that the disclaimer that I would have about the alumni database through OITE is that people aren't great about updating their contact information when they get a new job or when they change contact info. So you might need to use that in conjunction with sites like LinkedIn. Also think about your alma mater. So alumni databases and alumni associations that you're connected to from your undergraduate or your graduate work. You most likely have access to a database through the university itself, but you also would want to kind of connect with those associations on LinkedIn and join the groups that your universities are facilitating and running on those platforms as well. So professional associations are another really great way to network, and not just by attending conferences, but a lot of times similarly joining those groups on LinkedIn, participating in the discussions that happen within chat functions within these associations is also a great way to kind of be seen and to start developing new connections and relationships in any community organizations that you have a strong affiliation with. So social media is becoming a great networking tool as well, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail now. Okay, so first and foremost, when we're thinking about social media, I think a lot of times we initially think of LinkedIn as it's really the preeminent professional networking site, but more and more I am hearing trainees successfully use Twitter for career development purposes. And so especially now, we hosted one of our largest career events of the year a few weeks ago, the Career Symposium, and we put a lot of our events on YouTube, and we had an OITE live career conversation on Twitter. And so Twitter, especially now while we're physically distancing, is becoming a really great platform to help all of us stay connected. So what I would recommend when you're using this, especially if you are a novice to Twitter, is to kind of think about keywords and hashtags are going to be the ways that you're going to kind of find people and topics that you want to connect with. So a lot of people use the hashtag science careers, PhD jobs, science PhD, just to kind of get started. But there's obviously going to be keywords that are going to be specific to you for your area of expertise and your area of focus. And you're going to quickly start seeing who you're going to want to follow in terms of companies, organizations, people in your field of interest or in your current career. And we actually have a blog post. So for those of you who are not familiar with our OITE career blog, there's a link on this slide that will take you to a post that we wrote about specifically on Twitter. But just generally speaking, the OITE career blog is a great resource. I would encourage you to start following it. We usually post new content weekly, and we have a variety of different topics and areas that we cover. And the blog has been in existence for many years now, so there's a lot of really great archived content as well. So if Twitter hasn't been sort of on your radar in terms of thinking about the uses for professional networking, I really encourage you to consider that. Okay, so LinkedIn. So most of you have probably heard the importance of LinkedIn, and it really is the go-to site for professional networking. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, and especially if you are focusing on a non-academic job search, I really encourage you to just sit down, carve out a few hours and put one together. Some of the key things that I think are really, really helpful within LinkedIn are kind of things that I've already mentioned. Follow organizations, join associations that are relevant to you, alumni associations, and then I'm going to have a few final kind of LinkedIn tips for you too. Obviously, we got this from LinkedIn reports that there is great success when you use LinkedIn, and a lot of people are saying that just regular contact on LinkedIn does lead to new connections and new hires. I will say that generally speaking, LinkedIn, the more you use it, the better it becomes at recognizing what you might be interested in. And so if you start searching for more people or start searching organizations, LinkedIn's algorithm is really nice about saying, oh, I see that you searched for AstraZeneca. You might also be interested in XYZ. And so I think the more you use it, the better it starts tailoring its recommendations for you. Okay, so 3 LinkedIn tips. It's really important for you to have a photo and make sure that it is a professional photo of just you. I see a lot of photos of people who were clearly cropped out. They're on a beach. They have sunglasses on. Try to make sure that it's as professional as possible and clear, and it doesn't have to be like a glamour shot, but just make sure that it's a professional photo of you. For when we actually have the Career Symposium in person again, we actually have a LinkedIn photo booth. So that's a great opportunity to update your LinkedIn photo. But I think even just kind of taking out your iPhone, getting good lighting, that's going to help too. So a lot of times I meet with trainees who are really stressed out about their LinkedIn profile and what do they need to put on this, and do they need to fill out all of the sections, and do they need to upload, proof and papers and all of these things. And I generally say, especially if you're just getting started, don't get too stressed out about it. As long as you have a photo, a good headline, and a robust summary, then those are really the 3 main things that you need to have on your LinkedIn profile in order to start connecting with people. And the summary section is important because I've heard from a variety of different sources that recruiters can only search the summary section within your LinkedIn profile. So it's really key to have those keywords and to have sort of the areas of expertise that you have and the areas of interest where you're hoping to go. If you need inspiration, play with your settings, go incognito for a while where nobody can see that you're kind of snooping on their profiles, and look at aspirational profiles and see how they have their summary set up and what keywords they're using and what might be important for you to highlight within your own summary. And once you've done all of that, start reaching out to people. So LinkedIn really needs to be it's an active tool, and it's a tool that you can use in order to make that connection. So when you're reaching out to people for requests to connect, make sure that you personalize them. If you met the person, or even if it's just a cold contact that you're reaching out to, explain how you found them and why you're hoping to connect. So don't just let the kind of LinkedIn default message be the one that you use in order to connect. I actually have a few colleagues in my office who will not accept requests from people unless there is a personalized note included. So make sure that you're taking the time to do that. So overall, I hope that this presentation and this workshop on networking has kind of helped normalize the process of networking for you and has given you some ideas on how to think about engaging in networking and how to initiate informational interviews. So what I am challenging you to do is to contact 3 people from your network in order to conduct an informational interview with. And when you're doing that, most of the time you're sending an email to them or you're contacting them via LinkedIn. And I would really encourage you to make the request really short, really concise. So here's an example. Dear Dr. X, I'm currently a postdoc at the NIH. I was hoping to get a little bit more information about how you navigated your career in blank. Do you have 15 to 20 minutes to spare for a telephone call? Thanks in advance. I look forward to hearing from you. So as long as you're saying who you are, how you found them, and what you're hoping for, and what you're hoping for is a quick call to chat. And usually if it's a really, really small lift, like 15 to 20 minutes, I will tell you that most of the time it turns into longer than 15 to 20 minutes. But you know, people are more likely to respond positively. So think about kind of using this email outreach framework and sample kind of going forward. So some final tips, and then I'm going to see what questions you all have for me. I know we are nearing the end of our time. We actually are at the end of our time, but I'm going to stay on and answer questions. So make sure that you're asking more than you're telling. Really, the benefit of a good networker is getting people to open up and share information and talk about their experiences. And most people are really flattered to hear that somebody wants to learn a little bit more about them and are more than happy to talk and to share their experience. Like I said, respect their time, be the one to wrap up the conversation. If you ask for a 20-minute informational interview, at 20 minutes, say, I just wanted to check in with you. I know we're in the middle of some of the questions. I don't want to overstay my welcome. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully maybe we could set up another time to chat and see what they say, but be the one to try to wrap up the conversation and take the lead. So use finesse, please don't come on too strong. And by coming on too strong, that's when you kind of are asking explicitly for jobs or asking overly personal information. So be assertive, but not overly aggressive. And as I mentioned, always follow up with a thank you and try to nurture those connections for years to come, playing the long game with networking. So a few more resources. We have a lot of blogs on networking in general. We have an interview with a postdoc who used LinkedIn in order to help within her job search and how to use your own networking map. So check these out as well. Now I'm going to check out what questions you guys have for me. So feel free to, if you don't have a question, feel free to log off and thank you for attending. But I'm going to go through and see some of the questions that you have now. All right. Yeah, so some of the questions are about feeling fearful of making a networking mistake. And so then it kind of paralyzes the person and they don't end up networking at all. And is it better to try to network and make a few mistakes here and there or not network at all? And I would say absolutely it's better to try. You know, this is going to be a learning process, and the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And if you have questions along the way, please reach out to career advisors, especially if you are at the NIH. You know, you do have a lot of resources through OITE to help you. So definitely try to engage in the process. Okay. So some questions about networking with professors and PIs in order to improve your chances of getting a spot in a lab, especially when you're applying to doctoral programs. I've definitely heard of people doing this successfully and sort of establishing those relationships ahead of time and just kind of that rapport. So I think that that's absolutely something that can be done. In terms of directors of graduate programs, should I attach a CV? In this case, what do you think? So I think that my general advice when you are reaching out for any kind of informational interview is not to lead with your resume and CV. If you are applying specifically to a program like a graduate school program, I do think that that's probably one exception and it's okay to include. Okay, let's see, what other questions? When are we supposed to go into the elevator pitch? So I would say the elevator pitch is asking, telling somebody a little bit more about yourself kind of naturally happens at the beginning of the conversation. So you could start the conversation by saying, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. I just want to give you a little bit of background about myself, and then you can kind of go into your little pitch, and then start asking them questions about their career path. Okay, so when you're contacting someone you don't know at all and asking for an informational interview, should you try to schedule that via phone or video if you don't live in the same city area? I think it really depends on the person's preference, and I would give them the option to choose. I think right now a lot of people are kind of zoomed out and feel like they're constantly on video meetings all day, and it might be nice to just give them the choice of what would be better for them. Ooh, this is a good one. Would it be inappropriate to reach out to someone for an informational interview when you've applied for a job in their department? Should you mention that you applied for the position but are not asking for the job, of course? Yeah, I think this is a really, this is a tough one, because if you have already applied for a position in the department and then you're reaching out to people within that department for informational interviews, I think you would need to be very, very clear early on that you have already applied for a position. And I do think in an ideal situation, it would be that you're reaching out to the people before you're actually applying. I know that that's not always how it works, because positions are only posted online for a certain amount of time and you have to get your application in. But I think you would need to be very, very clear about that early on, and recognize that it could be construed as a kind of like overstepping your bounds a little bit. So if possible in the future, try to set up the informational interviews ahead of applying. But if that doesn't work, please be explicitly clear that you have applied. All right, let's see. I've had a couple of informational interviews that resulted in me giving my resume to my contact for them to give to a hiring manager about a job posting, but I haven't heard back from them yet. When do you reach out again? I would say, depending on when this all happened, if a week or two has passed, then you could absolutely reach out and follow up. What about background photos on LinkedIn? How valuable are those? Yeah, that's a new thing, and I think that's sort of like a nice extra, but not a necessary to have by any means, as long as you have a photo of yourself. I don't think you need sort of like that banner background photo. Okay, let's see what other questions you had. If you're referred to a contact from someone, is it appropriate to name drop in saying so-and-so sent me? Yes, it is. So I think that you could check in with the person first and just make sure that it's okay that you sort of name drop them. I would say that that's true even when you name drop somebody in a cover letter and say, I'm applying to this position. I learned about this role from so-and-so. It's always kind of a nice etiquette to check in with them and make sure, but generally it's fine. Okay. Okay. All right, I think that I got to most of the questions. Oh wait, there's one more. Sorry, here we go. Let's see. I grew up in a different culture than the norm here. Networking may seem like nepotism in other countries, and here in the US is a sign of enthusiasm and sociability. My question is, how long after an interview is done should we follow up with them? A lot of times they forget whom they've interviewed soon after the interview is done. Yeah, I mean, I think that follow-up is often dependent on kind of how that conversation went. But I would say that generally, like a week or two, if you haven't heard from them, is kind of the standard in terms of following up, and remembering that you can follow up twice, and then kind of letting it fizzle out from there. Okay, if I didn't get to your questions, I will try to follow up with you directly. But thank you all so much for your attention today and for joining this conversation about networking. I hope that it was helpful for you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.